In this episode, I had the privilege of speaking with Joan Tower about her work 1920-2019. Let's listen in.
The title is 1920-2019. And the project is about women that was put together by Deborah Borda from the New York Philharmonic. An amazingly gutsy, courageous, visionary project where she commissioned 19 women composers for the New York Phil. So I was one of them. And so I picked these years, which are probably the two most significant years for women. 1920 was the ratification of the women's vote. And 2019 was the height of the Me Too movement, where women were suddenly being elevated in very important ways and all over different areas of business, politics, and the arts. It was a very significant time for women, so that's why I called it that. I've written a lot for percussion. I love it. I grew up in South America, in Bolivia, La Paz, Bolivia. When I was a kid, my nanny used to take me to these festivals for saints. It was basically an excuse to have a party, but she was this very good-looking young woman who was going to go out dancing with whoever was available, and she would drop me off at the bandstand, and the band players would throw me a maraca or a castanet or something, and I'd be playing along with them. And that was the beginning of my percussion passion. We were hidden pretty much. I mean, we weren't in the books, we weren't on public venues. You know, as compared to the other arts, ours was pretty bad, actually, in terms of bringing women forward. So when people started mentioning me as a pioneer, at first I didn't know what the hell they were talking about. You know, I said, what does that mean? But then as I studied the history, I started to think, well, that's partly true, actually. Because when I was coming up, there were no women around. All the books I studied at Columbia, for my PhD, very few women in the books. But in the 1990s, that started to change. And more we started to get programmed in major venues. But it was very late that started to happen. Classical music, at one point, it became a dead white European male domain, right? Now that's changing, but this is very recent.
What kind of changes do you hope happen from here? What kind of progress do you think still should be made?
We have to learn to take up more space. You don't hear pieces by living composers that are 30 minutes. You don't hear them. You hear pieces that are 20 minutes, 15 minutes, 10 minutes, and down. The composers felt they couldn't do that because it wasn't wanted, and it's true. See, I think this helps Beethoven. This is going to sound weird. Beethoven is my favorite composer, actually. I admit that begrudgingly. Sorry, Ludwig. When you have different people in the same room, you learn from the other, right? So an audience hears a piece of mine, they hear a piece of Beethoven's, and they hear a piece of Stravinsky, let's say. They play off of each other. They teach each other, if they're strong pieces. They have to be strong. It's a pleasure to be here in Atlanta, and I thank Jerry for picking this piece and for bringing me down here and introducing me to this wonderful orchestra.